Well, next we're going to talk about Liverpool and Arne Slot's dismissal. We're going to welcome in Beth. Are you surprised at all at first the announcement that Slot is going to go, and secondly the timing of it coming a week after the end of the season?
Yeah, well, the news actually came through, got a little bit of a heads up just as I was about to step out on my front door to go for a barbecue. So that probably indicates how shocked I was when I saw the news and surprised by the timing of it. I think the fact that he's actually gone, when you consider the way this season has gone, when you consider what the mood has been like in the club, within the fan base, it's not a surprise. I think it is the right decision. But it obviously goes against everything that all the messaging that has been coming out of the club for the vast majority of the season has been that, everyone, the hierarchy has been behind Arne Slot. He got asked, I think it was before the Aston Villa game, which was Liverpool's penultimate game of the season, whether he expected to still be in charge next season. And he said yes, he had every reason to believe so. And again, you can kind of take those things at face value or not, but he did seem to have genuine conviction that he would be involved in the planning for the summer and would be in charge going into next season. So I think, it has been a surprise that they've taken this decision now, having backed him for the duration of the campaign. However, Liverpool like to do things quite methodically. They don't like to be an emotional club when it comes to making decisions. And I think that is why they've done it now. They've allowed sort of the dust to settle on the season. And listen, I think you'd have to be naive to think they've just had a change of heart this week. I'm sure it's been something that has been bubbling away in the background for, a good few weeks, if not months. Richard Hughes, the sporting director, was at Anfield when Liverpool drew with Chelsea earlier this month. Mark and I were both there for that game, and remember we just turned to look at each other when the Anfield crowd booed when Rio Angamora was subbed off. But that just showed the strength of feeling, the disconnect between Slot and the fan base. And it felt like that was almost insurmountable by the end. So, I think it's the right decision. I think the fact that they've done it now is obviously allowed, it will allow whoever comes in next, which we think will be Andoni Iraola from Bournemouth. It will allow him time to plan with the squad, to have a bit of a say on transfers. And just allow for sort of the minimum disruption, having, Liverpool having secured Champions League qualification at the end of the season.
Mark, what do you think has cost Arne Slot his job? Because it's not so long ago that he was lifting the Premier League trophy, but obviously the results haven't been great this season. Beth mentioned there the sort of the fan reaction to some of his decisions. His style of football hasn't been particularly well received. There's also issues, or has been issues, within the squad, particularly around Mo Salah and some of his public declarations, particularly that social media post sort of towards the end of the season. What do you think has been the main factor in Liverpool making this decision?
Yeah, well, I think you've addressed a few of those there, Rob, but I think it's basically at least 4 results in May. I think that probably tips a kind of maybe a 50-50 decision in March and April over the edge, because they played 4 games in May, didn't win any of them, lost 2, drew 2, and I think at the end of it, they just crawled over the line for the Champions League. It was very, very close, and they only crawled over the line because 5th place was available. So this season ended badly. If you end the season badly, it does kind of increase the sense that you're losing your grip. And I agree with Beth that the fans had lost patience with Arne Slot in the most kind of humane and sensitive way I've ever seen a fan group lose patience with the manager. There was no hostility. There was no. I mean, obviously they booed the Ingamoa situation during the Chelsea game, but it never felt hostile or angry. It just felt like exasperation and sadness, really, because this is the guy that's won the league and he was very popular in his first season, but a lot of things kind of combined together. And, some people have said that he didn't talk or act like a Liverpool manager. He was very methodical, very straight, very honest. The people at the club say, lovely guy, decent guy. But I think what they mean is when they say he didn't act or talk like a Liverpool manager, what they really mean is that he didn't act or talk like Jurgen Klopp, because Klopp has now set the benchmark for all Liverpool managers for the next 10, 15, 20 years, because, he put the club back on a footing that they hadn't been for a long time. Prior to Klopp, Liverpool were a declining force, and he basically re-established Liverpool as a giant. But Klopp was the perfect manager for Liverpool. The way they played his football, the way he acted on the touchline, the passion that he showed, the way he spoke, he was the perfect manager for Liverpool. And anyone coming in after that was going to find it difficult. Arne Slot had a brilliant start winning the league. But I think Beth will agree on this. I think although he had that great season, it did start to tail off in about February time. I think they lost at Plymouth in the FA Cup when he put his second string out. From that point on, went out of the Champions League to PSG, the cracks had already started to show then. So it's maybe a harsh accusation to say Jurgen Klopp's team won that Premier League, but maybe they did. Now, obviously, Klopp didn't win the titles last season, so it's hard to say that he left a great team. But I think there was an element of Klopp's big players having one like final flourish, but it did start, tailing off from February onwards. So if you look at that, Slot's body of work over the last 12 months and beyond has been unimpressive. So it's not been an instant thing. So the last 12 months have been great, and I think the last month has been the killer for me. The fact that four games, no wins, and the final thing, Iraola's available, and that is a big thing because he's available, he's free, he's relatively cheap. It does seem to be a rising star. It ticks a lot of boxes. He knows Richard Hughes from his time at Bournemouth. So, I know Liverpool are, set to open talk with Iraola. I think sometimes we all know that there's a bit of a game being played. Iraola's going to go to Liverpool. It's not a case of like, let's still see if Andoni Iraola wants the job. It'll happen pretty soon.
Well, just before we get on to possible successors and Iraola, Beth, you spent a lot of time with Arne Slot. How will fans remember his 2 years in charge? Because I mean, the contrast between that first season, particularly the start of the first season, compared to the way it's ended, is quite stark. And it's almost seemed to be forgotten that he's almost took an impossible job in replacing Jurgen Klopp and then won the title in his first year. But then a year later, he's out of work.
Yeah, well, I think, and I hope that the history will be kind to him. I think, in a way, the fact that he's gone now will actually, in the long run, probably benefit him and enhance his legacy at Liverpool. Because I think, going into next season, it was so difficult to imagine a world where he turned around, where he sort of turned the ship around and was able to reverse the damage done this season. There was so much apathy, exasperation. Certainly when you go online, that there wasn't hostility in the ground, but online, the level of vitriol that he was receiving was something that I've never seen towards a Liverpool manager. And I think had that continued into next season, had he, even if he'd won his first 5 games, as he did actually at the start of the season just gone, but I think even if he'd done that and then he'd lost game number 6, I think that the tide would have turned on him very, very quickly. So I actually think the fact that he's gone now, the fact that he can, I imagine he'll go on and be successful elsewhere. And I think if he's interviewing for any other big jobs, which I'm sure he will over the next few years, he can point to his 2 years at Liverpool and say, well, listen, I won the league in my first year, having taken over from Jurgen Klopp, which, as you say, it was a huge job, a job that actually not a lot of people sort of threw the hat in the ring for. Xabi Alonso has been the fan favourite choice for a while to take over from Slot. Obviously before he took up his position at Chelsea, and even he sort of, gave up the opportunity to interview for the job because he wanted to stay at Leverkusen, probably with the, maybe with the knowledge that the Real Madrid job was on the horizon, but also because, he probably thought, I don't want to be the guy that has to follow Jurgen Klopp. So for Arne Slot to do that, I think required an enormous amount of courage. He did it, in an exemplary manner in his first season. I think then the way he presided over what was obviously a hugely difficult last summer with Diogo Jota, I think that is almost his greatest achievement at the club, because he had to become then almost like a statesman. The squad were out in Portugal for the funeral of Diogo and his brother Andre, and to sort of have to bring the squad together after that was, it's something that a football manager shouldn't have to do, but he did. He wrote a lovely open letter that's been published in the Liverpool Echo this morning, where he spoke about the unity that he felt in that time, and a very gracious letter from a man that has just been sacked. I'm not quite sure there'd be too many managers who would speak so graciously. So I think in the long run, I think he'll be remembered very fondly. Like I say, I think he'll go on elsewhere and do well. I just think it was best for all parties that there was a clean slate this summer. I think having a fresh voice, a fresh face in the dressing room was important. I think there's been a lot of talk about him having lost the dressing room, and I don't necessarily think it was like a rift in the way that a lot of people have speculated about. Obviously, Mo Salah and him didn't really see eye to eye by the end, but I think for the most part, it was just a lot of the players were almost, again, a little bit apathetic, a little bit disillusioned. Not that they had any great dislike of him, but just that they needed a bit of a fresh impetus. And I think, that is what someone else coming in will provide. So, yeah, I think in the long run, he'll be remembered fondly at Anfield. I'm sure always welcome back in the future.
Well, let's move on to possible successors. I mean, it looks like it's going to be Iraola at Bournemouth. Beth mentioned there, though, Xabi Alonso. I think the last time we had Beth on the pod, we talked about, how difficult it was for Arne Slot with Xabi Alonso being free and available and lots of Liverpool fans wanting him to come in. When he signed that deal with Chelsea, particularly from the outside, it felt like Liverpool had kind of made a decision to stick with Arne Slot. Obviously, that's not happened, and they're going to turn to Iraola. I mean, what do you make of that situation, Mark? And is Iraola the right man, do you think?
Well, and Beth made no more than me on this, but I've been told right from the outset, right from back to 2 years ago, that Xabi Alonso was never really kind of high on Liverpool's list. And I think a lot of it is, I think there's an element of the fact that clubs don't really want to go for a club legend if they can help it, because that club legend becomes quite a powerful figure, and you don't want a manager who's more powerful than sporting directors in the hierarchy, do they? So that's one element. But I think his style of play, I mean, this change with Slot is being designed by Liverpool to, in many aspects, to have a more attacking front foot way of playing, and that isn't Xabi Alonso's way of playing, really. Xabi Alonso isn't that. He's certainly not a kind of a clock disciple. I'm not saying that Iraola is, but Iraola's Bournemouth do play a very high energy way of playing football. So that is more suited to what Liverpool want. And Iraola it comes to the job. Well, I'm expecting to get the job, but I think there have been other candidates named, but I think it's all a bit of a phony war in many ways. That Iraola's the guy. He is very much Premier League experience. He's overperformed at Bournemouth. He knows the sporting hierarchy at Liverpool. He knows some of the players. I mean, obviously, Kirk has left Bournemouth for Liverpool as well. He seems to fit with that group of players that Liverpool have got, and I think he would bring that high energy. And I think, he has that, also like the credentials. There's so many Basque managers right now who are doing really well. I mean, obviously, Xabi Alonso's another one, but it seems to be like, when people used to talk about all the Scottish managers, that's Alex Ferguson, that part of Spain is producing so many top coaches. I think Iraola really is a rising star. I think Liverpool have decided that, look, he's available now. He has been linked with AC Milan. Let's go for it now, rather than wait until halfway through next season. You probably look to what happened to Man United, Ruben Amorim and Erik ten Hag. If you kind of keep a manager in a club that you've got doubts about, it never usually ends well. So make the change now. The guy's available. The guy's relatively cheap. I've been told the wages that he wanted at Bournemouth are similar to what Slot earned at Liverpool, so that's not going to be an issue. And get him in now so you can press the reset button, because you look across the Premier League at the moment, apart from Arsenal, who've got Mikel Arteta, who's the longest-serving manager now, 6 years. Man United have got a new manager. Chelsea have got a new manager. Man City will have a new manager when Enzo Maresca is confirmed at some point this week. Liverpool are going to have a new manager. So it feels like 2013 all over again when Alex Ferguson left Man United and Jose Mourinho went to Chelsea and Manuel Pellegrini went to Man City. Big change of manager. And it's almost like we're resetting the board now. And Liverpool had to do it this summer because they didn't want to kind of be caught 6 months behind by sacking Slot mid-season when it wasn't going well.
Well, let's just finish on Liverpool's squad then, Beth. I mean, what kind of job is if it is going to be Iraola, what kind of state is he walking into at Anfield? Obviously, there's work to do with the squad. Konate is going to leave. Obviously, Mo Salah needs replaced. What do you expect Liverpool to do over the summer, and what will the expectations be for Iraola and that squad next season?
Yeah, well, I think Liverpool need to do a lot this summer. I think that was already the case. Even discounting all of the departures, I think one of the big problems this season is that Liverpool have really lacked depth to compete on four fronts. I think if you look at Arsenal, the players that they were able to bring on in the Champions League final, obviously it didn't go their way in the end, but I think the depth that they have had, the depth that Manchester City have had, has been totally incomparable to what Liverpool have had. I mean, at Old Trafford a few weeks ago, Liverpool went there, and yes, they had a few injuries, but not a crisis as such, and still they were fielding 3-4 teenagers on the bench who barely played in the Premier League. So they need to add depth, and they need to have quality depth as well, because I think Arne Slot had the likes of Federico Chiesa, Wataru Endo at his disposal and didn't always turn to them, which I think suggested that he maybe didn't rate them. So I think that the manager, whoever it is, and we think it will be Iraola, has that, has players that he trusts, a core of 16, 17, 18 players that he's happy playing in any game. I think obviously the attack is a priority. No Mo Salah. Hugo Ekitike is going to be out with an Achilles problem until at least January, February, and even then, you don't know what state he's going to come back in. So I think they need at least 2 attackers, maybe even 3. I would argue that they need another centre back. I think the messaging from the club this week has been that they're going to maybe focus elsewhere. But I think having that experience to go alongside Virgil van Dijk and obviously the 2 young players in Leone and Jeremy Jacquet would be beneficial. I think they need a new right back. And I think they'd benefit from an addition in central midfield as well. So that's 5, 6, 7 players potentially that they need. Whether they'll get all that done, I don't know. Ibrahima Konate obviously gone. So they need some more leaders in that squad. So it's a big summer. It's another summer of transition, which I think Liverpool probably would have wanted to avoid when, you look at the money that they spent and the churn that was there last summer. And I think just to finish on Iraola, I think, there's been a lot of talk, this season about style of play and fans saying, it's not necessarily about winning all of the time. It's just as long as you're entertained. And I think, the principle of that is nice. And I guess there's an element of truth to it. But ultimately, this now is a fan base that has been conditioned to win. The past 10 years, they've been competing for the biggest honours. They've won 2 Premier League titles. They've won the Champions League and an array of domestic cups. So Iraola might get a season of sort of a little bit of freedom, and as long as things are moving in the right direction. But I think by year 2, if Liverpool aren't challenging for the Premier League and the Champions League, then I think things will turn quite quickly. But, Mark wrote a piece earlier this year about the managerial market and Manchester United, and maybe that's why they've ended up sticking with Michael Carrick, because there aren't, obvious contenders to be top managers, and someone has to be the next cab off the rank, I guess. And I hope, or Liverpool will hope certainly, that Andoni Iraola will be the next one.
I'll tell you what, though, if Andoni Iraola's listening to Beth, now he's going to drive straight back to Bournemouth. He's got a massive rebuild. He's got to win his first season. Good luck, mate.
No pressure.